In this video, we're going to talk about some advanced features of image frames, in particular, how to use image frames for text wrapping. So right now I have this single page and I have two image frames, one in the bottom left-hand corner, a circle, and one in the upper right-hand corner, a rectangle. So right now there's no content in these frames, and you probably noticed as I move them around, they just kind of sit on top of this content that's already there. Now obviously we go to the Layers panel and adjust whether it's behind or in front of this content, but let's say we want our content to wrap around this frame. So for instance, I want the text to kind of flow around it. Well, we've been working with the properties bar at the top quite a bit, right? We've been using rotational tools, skew tools, things like that, the scale, and so on and so forth. But further down here, we have how it interacts with text. These right here are the different text wrapping options. So by default, it's on no text wrap, so the text just flows through it. Let's change it to wraparound bounding box, and we can see it has the intended effect, right? As I move this around, it's going to wrap around that bounding box. Now this option, wraparound object shape, it's not going to do anything right now, but I'll show you what that does in just a little bit. And that takes into account transparency in individual objects nested within this frame. Finally, we have jump object, and jump is kind of like wrap, but it does it in a whole line. This is really great for doing things like if you're doing like an academic article or something like that, where you might have like figure one, and you have a clean break between these. So let's go ahead and place an image inside this. I'll go File, Place, pick our Illustrator file, and I'm going to do this page, say OK, and now it's placed that object. Right, so we've been working with objects within frames before, and it works just like how you think. You can move it around, scale it up, etc. But notice the text doesn't wrap around this object, it wraps around this frame, right? It's working on this blue bounding box right here. So let's select our frame, and instead of around bounding box, let's select around object shape. And now it'll try to use this object. Now note, it's not actually using the object proper, it's using the bounding box around your object. This is really important, so you can't do like, custom shapes around here without actually making a frame that's that size. Switch it back to bounding box. Now let's select our rounded shape down here. I'll go File, Place. Okay, and now I have brought my image in. So I'll select this frame. And just like before, we can choose how it wraps around that frame. So right now it's wrapping around the bounding box of our frame. And if we switch to Object, it's actually going to wrap around the circular aspect of this frame. So because we have this frame using the circle over here, it actually reads that as the object. So up here, right, if we did the wraparound object, it's just wrapping around the square frame of this object. And in this case, it's actually using a proper object. So that's why it's so important to actually choose which frame you're using whenever you're creating different pieces of content so that you know how the text is going to wrap around it. Now, just a few other advanced things that we can do with these frames. We haven't really talked about this too much, but there's settings like different strokes we can use. There's different effects. So for instance, we can apply a drop shadow effect. There's actually a full effects panel right here, which allows you to do things like outer glow, gradients, etc., and create some nice looks. To the right of that, we actually have different frame styles. Frame styles aren't going to do much on our current selection, but let's go up here and select our bounding box. I'll give it a few points of stroke. And here we can change the frame options. And then we have how content fits within it, which we don't really have to worry about too much, but we can center it, change the content to fill the frame, vice versa. We also have alignment options here. So these are just some more complex options for our different frames that we'll be playing with